The key to balancing your desire to be at peace with your need to achieve, perform, and earn a living is in recognizing that there's no such thing as stress. There's only people thinking stressful thoughts. It's really as simple as that. When you change the way you process the world you're processing changes. Stress is an inside job. You can't fill a container with it because tension isn't a physical item or object. There isn't some thing that you can point to and say, there it is, that's stress. It simply doesn't exist in that form. Yet 112 million people in America take medication for stress-related symptoms, which include fatigue, heart palpitations, indigestion, diarrhea, constipation, nervousness, excessive eating, rashes, nail biting, loss of appetite, insomnia, anxiety, irritability, panic, moodiness, memory lapses, the inability to concentrate, ulcers, obsessive-compulsive behavior, feeling upset, and on goes an almost inexhaustible list. And they're all caused by something that doesn't exist in the physical world. Being out of balance on this stress measure results in being one of the millions of people requiring medication to manage the symptoms listed above. It means that you often feel exasperated because you never really enjoy the life you work so hard to achieve. You may frequently feel as if you're spending your life running on an endless treadmill. All of the pressure of working and striving may have many worldly rewards, yet at the same time, there's a feeling of going absolutely nowhere. If this sounds familiar, it's a signal to begin reconsidering ways of processing thoughts about your life and work, and start pursuing freedom from the symptoms of stress by becoming more balanced. Getting into balance isn't necessarily about changing your behavior. Certainly you can pursue stress-reducing activities such as meditation, exercise, walks along a beach, or whatever might work for you, but if you continue to align yourself with achieving more, defeating the other guy, winning at all costs, and going faster because you believe that's how to keep up, then you're guaranteed to attract the vibrational equivalent of this thinking into your life, even if you do yoga and stand on your head chanting mantras every day. Stress reduction is about realignment. You become what you think about all day long. You also become how you think all day long. To measure the weight of your thoughts, you need to think in terms of vibration and energy. Let's suppose that you have a high-frequency desire to be a person who has no symptoms of stress. Let's assign this thought a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, with the lowest energy thought of 1 representing a nervous breakdown and a 10 representing enlightened, peaceful mastery. Next, you need to note the thoughts you have that support your desire for a peaceful, stress-free life. Thoughts such as, I'm overwhelmed, I've never have enough time, I have so many people wanting so many things from me that I don't even have enough time to think, I have so much more on my plate than I can handle, and I feel pressured by my need to make money to pay my bills, aren't balanced and peaceful. These thoughts are resistant energy, which counters the desire for a peaceful, stress-free existence. In other words, they're non-aligned and out of balance. Your desire may be a 10, but your mental energy in this situation is in a much lower range, perhaps a 2 or 3. Simply changing your behavior isn't going to get you back into balance. You're still attracting symptoms of stress when you say no to people and their demands, but vibrate to a frequency that's thinking, I really should be doing what they ask of me, or maybe I can squeeze in their requests a little bit later on if I adjust my schedule. You may have pulled back from an overly full and frenzied schedule, yet you continue to radiate thoughts of fear and scarcity that will activate the law of attraction to bring you fear and scarcity. If stress thoughts are tipping the scale, that's what the law of attraction brings. Remember, you become what you think about. If you're thinking scarcity or anger or fear, guess what? That's what the law of attraction attracts. Even with a well-balanced schedule that allows for more free time, and even with plenty of stress-reducing activities on your pared-down personal calendar, if you fail to align your thoughts with the success you're capable of attracting, the weight of the dominant thoughts will tip the scale away from a balanced life. How you live your daily life will remain out of balance, and you'll have failed to assimilate the essence of Gandhi's advice that there's more to life than increasing its speed. What you most need to learn is how to create a match between what it is that you desire in your life and what thoughts or vibrational energy you're choosing to attract those desires. Realigning your point of attraction, the art of becoming. Here's one of my favorite quotes from my teacher in India, Nisargadatta Maharaj. Quote, there is nothing to do, just be. Do nothing. Be. No climbing mountains and sitting in caves. I do not even say be yourself, since you do not know yourself. Just be, unquote. This idea may contradict everything you've been taught and how you've lived so far, but let it sink in anyway. If your lifetime inventory of ideas and rules has contributed to your being one of those 112 million who use medication to handle non-existent stress, you can certainly afford to entertain this thought. As you begin practicing the principles to realign with a vibration that matches your desire for a tranquil, peaceful life, you'll become more conscious of your thoughts. These thoughts of yours literally determine who you are. And the fact that you're listening to these words suggests that you're interested in becoming more conscious of your thoughts. Being and becoming are used synonymously here. In order to restore a sense of balance between your desire for tranquility and your desire to meet the requirements of your life, you must practice becoming and being the vibration that you desire. Being peace. Peace isn't something that you ultimately receive when you slow down the pace of your life. Peace is what you're capable of being and bringing to every encounter and event in the waking moments of your life. Most of us are waging a non-stop internal mental skirmish with everyone we encounter. Being peaceful is an inner attitude that you can enjoy when you've learned to silence your incessant inner dialogue. Being peaceful isn't dependent on what your surroundings look like. It seldom has anything to do with what the people around you think, say, or do. A noiseless environment isn't a requirement. St. Francis's famous prayer states it better than I can. Make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, St. Francis wasn't asking God to provide him with peace. He was asking for guidance to be more like the peace he trusted was his source. Being peace is different from looking for peace.
Everything you need to have total happiness and fulfillment and success and love in your life, you already have. You already have it. Right now, wherever you are, whoever you are, you have it right this minute. Just a matter of deciding to believe that. A woman asked me one time, what are the blocks to my happiness? She said, what are the blocks? I want to know the blocks. I said, the belief that you have blocks. You believe you have blocks. As soon as you believe you have blocks, you create the need to have blocks. And now you want to find out what the blocks are. There are no blocks out there if you send them all away. Stop believing that you'll have blocks. Then you stop looking for the blocks, and you stop defending the blocks, and you look for something else. People tend to blame circumstances for their unhappiness. They say, someone close to me is sick, and that makes me unhappy. And I say to them, no, that doesn't make you unhappy. Someone else close to you is sick that cannot make you unhappy. And they say, well, how is that possible? What do you mean? They're sick and I'm unhappy and they must be making me unhappy. I said, no, supposing that same person was sick and you didn't know about it. You just didn't know they were sick. Could you be unhappy? Well, of course not. How could I be unhappy about something I didn't know about? Well, they were sick. Their sickness didn't cause you to be unhappy. Their sickness existed independent of you. It's when you find out about it and process it and think about it in a certain way and you say, oh, that shouldn't be happening. Oh, that's awful. Or that's my friend. Or that's my mother. Or those things shouldn't be happening to me. People don't want to take the responsibility and say, I am making myself unhappy by what I see in life. Now, you may not want to be joyful about someone close to you being sick, but you have to be responsible for what's going on inside of you. My job was to teach people how to find methods to be able to manage their emotions more effectively. I now believe that you have to be the method. Okay? There is no method that you can find. You can't rely on a method any more than if you're overweight, you can rely on a diet. Or if you're smoking, you can rely on a cure or hypnotism or some kind of thing external to yourself. Or if you want to be religious, you can't rely on someone else to do it for you. It's that being that is the big difference. I believe I was directed to help people to understand that they have greatness within them and not to fear that greatness. That the reason people are not good at getting what they want out of life is not so much that they don't have the skills or the abilities, but in fact they don't think that they deserve it. Or if they do think they deserve it, they're afraid of it because it's bigger than I am. And there's a truth out there in the universe someplace, however it works, and I'm studying this now for some books I'll be writing in the future, that says you are not going to get it all. You are it all. You are not going to find happiness. You are happiness. You bring happiness to what you do in life rather than trying to get happiness out of what you do. Big, big difference between those two premises, because you're not searching for happiness anymore when you have it within you. I always tell people I'm not in the pleasure business. Right? I'm in the happiness business or the joy business, not in the pleasure business, even though pleasure is great. The distinction I make here is that when you become enlightened, you begin to find happiness in the absences of pleasure in your life. You can find happiness in that. You can embrace your colds, if you will, your headaches or your backaches or whatever, as opportunities. Rather than saying that if I don't have all pleasure, then I can't be happy, what you say is, I am happy even with the things that I don't like that are going on in my life right now. So you learn to find joy in those and embrace those things rather than trying to always send them away. And the suffering that you're experiencing, if you just stop right now and look at your payoffs for it and why you continue to do it, you will see that your suffering comes from wanting the world to be different than it is, or wanting somebody in the world to be different than they are. And when you stop that, when you just accept rather than want, then your suffering has to go out the window with it. And this is not to say that you can't desire things. You don't even have to say you can't want things. You can certainly want anything. But to need it for me to be happy must go. To understand what we're talking about here, you must understand that bringing happiness to something is very much different than trying to get it out of something. And when you are bringing it to something, then you always have it. When you're looking for it, it will always elude you. Always.
I have gone from telling people how to get something to trying to teach people now how to be something. And being is the essence of what I'm talking about. You must be it. Whatever it is, you must be health. You must not be trying to get it from pills or a doctor. You must be it. You must think it, live it, and be it. The great tape that I was talking about was Earl Nightingale's. It's called The Strangest Secret. It's the most popular cassette tape ever made. Earl Nightingale's tape goes like this. He said, the strangest secret is that human beings become whatever it is they visualize themselves to be. The great secret, the strangest secret, we become what we think about all day long. The question is, what do you think about all day long? Now, I'm not talking about whether you walk around saying, hey, I'm terrific and I'm going to do great things, and that's it. This is not it at all. Creative visualization is understanding first how you think. You think in pictures. Do you know that? We think as humans in pictures. We don't think in words. If I say garbage can, you don't think G-A-R, there's a B in there, there's an A-G-E-C-A-N, a can, and you don't think like that. You see a picture of a garbage can. If I say microphone, you picture a microphone. If I say beautiful person, whatever, you have a picture. All of our thinking is done in pictures. The greatest contribution that psychologists have made in this century, and there haven't been many, all right? The great contribution is we have discovered that an image gets stored away in you, whatever you is, whoever you are, gets stored away within you exactly the same as an experience, as doing something. That your subconscious, whatever that is, wherever that is, it's like a robot. It just stores things away, and they stay there forever. Everything that happens to you is stored away. Your brain has trillions of cells. Not millions, not billions, trillions of cells. It is capable of things that are just so phenomenal as far as healing, as far as health goes, as far as success goes, and it all depends on how you see yourself. Now, you get trained as a young person not to see yourself as a very competent human being, especially you women. Most of you were trained not to think of yourselves as equal with men or better. When you were little girls, many of you were taught that in order to be athletic, that's not feminine and that's not appropriate, and you don't do that, and so you have a lot of these sentences. And I ask you about these sentences that you use in your mind. The I'ms. I'm nervous. I'm shy. I'm not very good at mathematics. I'm not a good cook. I'm clumsy. You figure out the I'm. Now, every I'm that you have, a lot of that was encouraged because you weren't encouraged to take risks. And you must take risks if you want to be successful in life. You must take risks. When you're a child, I've heard parents say, don't you go near that water until you know how to swim. And I think, there's something missing in that logic there somewhere. And so you train yourself when you're young because you believe that stuff. Not that it's anybody else's fault. You believe it. You believed it. You didn't have to. Now you got to take responsibility for buying it. And if it doesn't apply anymore, sell it. And if nobody wants to buy it, then just give it away. Get rid of it. All right? And change the images. Now, what kind of images do you have? I'm not standing up here in front of all of you people saying that all you have to do is put a different picture in your head and your life is going to turn around. I am saying, and get this, I am saying that you must start first with the kinds of pictures that you have. And then they will get stored away in you as reality. And when that reality gets stored away in you, you will start acting on that reality rather than on another reality. Now, the reality that many of you operate on is this. It's the cold season. There's a flu going around. 44 states have got it. You have fever and you get coughing and you're going to be tied up for 2 or 3 weeks and you're going to have to go to a doctor and you're going to get it because it's going around. And you expect it and you warn your children about it and you tell them, see, I learned from Mrs. Scarf because she was weird. She was wonderful. She was very influential, but she was weird. And she would say, like, if you leave the window open and you get a draft, you're going to catch a cold. And every time she told a kid that, I noticed that they had a cold the next day. Because I always wanted the window open, and there were about 9 of us sleeping in there. I never got a cold because I didn't believe that. I didn't believe you could get a cold from a draft when we were out playing hockey all day long in 40 degrees below weather. And then suddenly a little breeze is going. If you see it happening, if you believe it, then it's going to happen. You see, with visualization goes expectations. With expectation go the choices that you make. And it starts with the kind of pictures that you have.
That's the soul speaking and saying, don't put me in a box. Don't compartmentalize me. Don't tell me what I have to be. Don't do that to me. The theme song of the soul was sung by Roy Rogers and Bing Crosby. Oh, give me land, lots of land, and the starry skies above. Let me ride through the wide open spaces that I love. Don't fence me in. Don't put a fence around me. There's something inside of me that is infinite. It wants to expand. If it's finite, that means it stops someplace. The part of you that's listening to this right now, what is that? What is that invisibleness within you? Certainly you're not this body, it's just dust. Getting that and understanding that. You know, not only did I write this entire book, 58 chapters, with each one having a section called I Can See Clearly Now, why I was being divinely guided to do this. I was driving down the Long Island Expressway in 1976, and I was living out in Huntington and teaching at St. John's University. I was a professor there, and I was about to be granted tenure, which scared the hell out of me because it means like you're going to be here the rest of your life. You know, you're not going to go anywhere else now that you got a job for life. That was something that inside I just couldn't handle. And I had just written this book, Your Erroneous Zones, and something just came over me. Honestly, it just came over me, and I pulled off on the Long Island Express. I just sat there, I was like, trying to catch my breath, and I realized, oh my God, if I go in there and get tenure, I'm going to be stuck here. This is where I'm going to be. I've already done this. I've been doing it for 6 years. And I got off back onto the Long Island Expressway, which is L-I-E, lie, and I didn't want to live that lie. And I went into the dean's office, Sarah Fassenmeyer, and I said, Dr. Fassenmeyer, I'm sorry. I said, but I don't want tenure. This is my last semester. I'm going to take Your Erroneous Zones out across the country and talk about it myself. And it was a moment. It was like, I call them quantum moments, divine guidance. See, these are rungs on the ladder. The rungs on the ladder are things like willingness and so on. And so many of those things have taken place in my life. And they're taking place in your lives all the time. If I were to sit down and interview any of you and just ask you to pull out of, what is it that made you feel good and what did you do about it? Were you meant to be a great artist and didn't pick up the brush? Were you meant to be a great writer and didn't sit down and do it? Are you fulfilling somebody else's idea of what your life ought to be? I can remember doing those kind of taking those. There's like, what are you willing to do? How determined are you to make it happen? How much fear do you have inside of you? Because fear isn't just, I'm afraid to die. Fear is like these little tiny things that we do to ourselves all day long. Like, why do you drive the speed limit? Do you drive the speed limit because you're afraid you're going to get a ticket, or do you drive it because it's the safe thing to do and because you love the people on there and you want to be safe? I mean, fear is like all over the place. Are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of disappointing somebody? Is this not going to look good on me? Am I too fat? It's like fear. And it's like these tiny little things and endless numbers of these, and they begin to coagulate, and then they become bigger and bigger, and they make us they make us automatons. They don't allow us to fulfill our destiny. And you won't get to a place where you can start to see really clearly now that being fearless is a very important part of it. Not only, ladies and gentlemen, did I write this other book and have it and do a public television special on it, and spent 5 months, morning, noon, and night, and my kids will tell you they couldn't get me away from it. It was just such a calling. It was like I had to do it. Because, this thing that I wrote out this morning, if there is intelligence behind life, and there's every reason to believe that there is, and must be, then all of that intelligence is innate in every creation of that intelligence. How could it not be? If you came from that, it must be within you. And all you've done is taken on an ego, which means you've edged God out, ego, and taken on this ego, which is a false idea that who you are is what you do and what you accomplish and what other people think about you, and your separation from it if you let go of that ego. Not only did I write that book, which isn't even published yet. It's published in Australia, because I was down there and we brought it out a little early in a paperback down there, but it'll be out in a few months. I'm already writing another book. It's so weird, this calling. What I'm saying is you've got to listen and be fearless. And not listen to anybody else's voices. You've got to listen to that still, quiet, passive voice within you that says, this is what makes you feel good. This is what's right. You've got to take the chance.
So when I speak of knowings and beliefs, I'm speaking about the difference between having doubt and not having it. And when you have a knowing about something, that knowing becomes so strong that all doubt has been banished. And as it says in the Course, I think probably the most quoted piece in the Course in Miracles says, if you knew, not if you believe, but if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear again. If you knew it, which means it's the difference between knowing about God, which is a belief, and knowing God, which is a knowing, which is a conscious contact and a banishment of doubt. And it is this knowing that you are not alone, that who you are is not that which is stuck over here, but who you are is something much more divine and grand than that. And knowing that, and when you have that knowing, then you can retreat. And as you retreat and let go, you allow yourself to become that manifester. And to understand this universal force, whatever you want to call this universal force, whether it's the divine mind or universal intelligence or the organizing intelligence, but you know that it's in all things. It's not a separate God for you and a separate one for you and a separate one for you. We all know that this universal, which means one, one, this universe, this one song, is in all things and all of us. It is what allows this over here to be. And as you come to know this, you have to understand the implication of that universal intelligence. What does that mean? If it is every place, it means that there is no place that it is not. Right? Which means it does not individualize or particularize into an individual personality. It is just there in all things. If you instantly say that this God force particularizes into an individual, what you're saying is that then there's some place that it's not. If it's in this, but not here, then it's no longer universal. So it can't do that. And as you come to ask yourself this question, if I knew that I had the ability to manifest what it is that I would like to be able to manifest for myself in my life, if I knew this, which is an absolute banishment of all doubt, and I knew that I had this power, what would it be? Would you rid yourself of an addiction? Would you manifest for yourself a healing, a divine relationship, prosperity, abundance, health, a job, a promotion, a child? Whatever it is that you would instantly think of, ask yourself and then just set it aside. What is it within me that keeps me from doing it? You see, this is really the crux. Everything that you process or perceive to be missing from your life, that you would like to be able to manifest, has within it the same organizing divine intelligence that is in you. So when you learn to manifest, what you are really doing is aligning your intention with divine intelligence. Or another way of saying it is you are manifesting another aspect of yourself. Of yourself. That divine force that is everywhere is in all things, including that which is missing from your life.
I remember when my wife and I went into a remote village in Bali, and as we were going into the village, nobody was wearing any clothes. The women were balancing pots on their heads. It was very, very non-Western place, way out in a remote area of Bali in Indonesia. And at the entrance to the gate of the village, there was an old man, and he was lying there, and he was looking up at the sky, and he was chanting and making some noises. And I said to the person, there was only one person in the whole village who spoke English, who had arranged for my wife and I to visit this place. And I said to her, "Who is that? What is he doing?" He said, "Oh, he's a cloud mover and a cloud maker. He makes the clouds." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, he's a cloud maker." I said, "Well, what would you want a cloud maker for?" He said, "Well, when there's periods of drought, his assignment, his job, what he does is he brings clouds and he brings precipitation and he will end the drought." And of course, my reaction, now that was maybe 15 years ago, my reaction, and I have been known as being pretty weird. At that moment, at that time in my life, even though I wanted to embrace that awareness or that notion that someone had the power to be able to alter natural forces, I still had an enormous amount of conditioned doubt that that's something that we have the capacity to do. It was only when I began to move into a much more spiritual realm in my life when I began to realize that the same energy that moves a thought across my mind moves a cloud across the sky. There's only one. And the same energy that opens a flower in the morning beats my heart every day. And the same energy that moves the planets throughout the galaxies also allows a tiny little seed to become a human being. There's only one energy. And if there's only one energy in the world, one universal force, and it's in everything and it's everywhere, there's no place that it is not, then it's not outside the realm of even logic to assume that if it's in me and it's in the clouds, that if I could somehow banish the idea that I had the capacity to be able to use that same energy that's in the clouds, that's in me, to be able to bring about precipitation, if I had that capacity. And it's about banishing doubt.
The 100th Monkey is a philosophy based upon the writing of a man named Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake lives in England, and he has written a book, which I have been studying, called A New Science of Life. And it was voted by the American Academy of Physics as the book most likely to be burned by their academy. All right? Because it is so blasphemous and absurd and silly, the notions inside of it. What Rupert Sheldrake is suggesting is that memory, which is what we can recall of all the things that have happened to us, is simply not stored in the brain. It's just not stored in the brain. All kinds of physical evidence to, like where they do experiments with cutting out pieces of the brain, a lot of ways of scientific evidence of establishing this belief. Just let it in. Don't endorse it, just let it in. Don't bite off my finger. Just look to where it's pointing for a few minutes, okay? The notion is that if memory, of course, is not stored in our brain, then where is it? Right? The philosophy is very simple, that all members of a species are connected together through what they call morphogenetic fields, just very much like magnets. And these fields surround all human beings. The 100th monkey is the number. The 100th monkey. Off the coast of Japan, there's an island. And they took a group of these monkeys from one species, and they put sweet potatoes out there on the beach. And they watched the monkeys. And the monkeys began to wash the sweet potatoes in a certain way that was peculiar to this species. And they began to eat them in a way that was peculiar to this species. After a given amount of time, when a certain number of monkeys within that species began to do that, the same behavior began to crop up in monkeys of the same species on islands 200 and 300 miles away. The question is, how did it happen? How could that have happened? And that's, without going into all the details of that, if there is truth that all members of a species are connected, that all human beings are connected as well. And if all of us are connected in some way that we don't understand, but in fact are connected, then I'm not here to tell you that you have to be thinking positive thoughts because it'll improve your life. I'm here to tell you that you have an obligation because you could be depressing somebody in Uruguay right now by thinking negative thoughts. It's true. Now just think about it. Just let it in. The highest form of ignorance is to reject something you know nothing about. That's the highest form you can get to. We know so little about this whole idea. But what we do know is that when human beings begin to think in positive, healthy ways, that they reduce certain endorphins into the chemistry of your blood. This is from Anatomy of an Illness, Norman Cousins. And that when you think positive, happy, loving, laughing thoughts, there's a different chemistry that goes into your body than when you think depressing, negative, anguishing, despairing thoughts. And that thinking the way that you decide to think has a dramatic effect on your chemistry and on your physiology and on your health as a human being. And that we know that when they did the artificial heart transplants, when they were looking for all the people up in Kentucky, who they were going to pick, there were many, many volunteers because a lot of these people only have a few weeks left to live. So if they could get a few more months, they were very willing to be expended. The number one criteria was the will to live. What kind of an attitude does this human being have? How do they think? Because we do not want somebody who gives up on life, who is going to feel bad, who is going to be telling himself that he shouldn't be in this position. So as you begin to think about the possibility, here's what Ken Keyes did in The 100th Monkey. He said, and The 100th Monkey is about nothing I've said so far. That's just all what I learned through my own research and my own reading and so on. The 100th Monkey is a book about nuclear war. The belief is this. If enough people on our planet think there's going to be a nuclear holocaust and believe that it's going to happen, we are going to create it by the way that we think. When a critical mass, and that's the theory, the 100th monkey, when you get to a certain number of people thinking anything, then it begins to spread to the rest of us all over our planet, and we begin to act upon those collective thoughts. The thinking is, who knows, I'm open to it, that we are not only connected to everybody who's alive, but everybody who ever has been, and everybody who ever will be. That we may all in some way be connected. So that if we want, the number one thing in the Hunger Project is that we are trying to raise the consciousness of the world, to help people to understand that starvation is something we cannot tolerate any longer. We won't have it. We won't think of it as something that is inevitable. What is happening now is people are beginning to say, what can I do? How can I change that? The same thing is true with nuclear war. If you want to think about raising your children, my friends, what more important parental task do you have than to make sure that our world is a place that's going to be inhabitable for our children and our grandchildren? As Victor Hugo said, there is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And we can make any idea have its time come by collectively thinking in these ways. And imagine that we're all connected like this. Imagine.
There is a world beyond the world of the changing. Beyond the world of the changing. So that the world of the changing, when Lao Tzu, the great ancient founder of the Tao, back in the 5th century BC, the founder of Taoism, a beautiful sort of philosophy which is all summarized in about 83 pages. It's great. All right? You can read it in an afternoon. And Lao Tzu was asked the question, what is real, Master? What is real? And his response was, that is real, which never changes. So almost as if you have to look at your own life and your own self, and you have to ask the question, what part of me meets that criteria? What part of me says, I am eternal? I have always been. What part of you has never changed? I don't know about you, but it's not my body. I promise you that. My body has undergone dramatic changes, but there's inside of this body, there is a witness. And this witness is noticing and observing and has never aged or never changed. Lao Tzu said the second thing that historically everyone has believed in is that we are connected to that world that is never changing. That it is a part of us. We live with it. It's within us. Everything that we see in the physical world is changing. I was giving a talk not too long ago in Baltimore, and I was sitting just jotting down a few things that I wanted to talk about that evening, and there was a mirrored wall right next to me. The whole wall was mirrored. And I was feeling really great. I had just run about 10 miles, and I was just feeling really up and terrific, and I had a nice big audience coming that night, and everything was just really great. And I looked up over at the wall, and then I looked down again, and then I looked again real fast. Have you ever done that, where you look in the mirror and you say, who is that in there? And I looked down and I looked in again. And then I stopped and I put my pen down and I started staring at this face that was looking back at me. And I said, there's an old man in there renting my face. That's not me. You see, the part of me that is in here, that has been watching this, that has been observing this, that has been noticing this, has never aged and never does. It never can. I remember one time I was out running when we were on the road, and my wife was with me, and I had been running for a couple of hours and early in the morning, and it was a real beautiful, crisp morning, and she waved at me and she said, come on, we're going to have breakfast or something. And I stopped running and I ran across this field, and there was a fence. The fence was about this high. And I ran up to the fence and I hurled over the fence. I just jumped over the fence. And she looked at me, she said, you can't do that. I said, do what? She said, you're 56 years old. You don't jump over fences when you're 56 years old. You could kill yourself. I said, I forgot. And the part of me that's in here, that's noticing, that's watching, and the part of you that's in you, watching, things are falling. You've noticed that, right? Things are wrinkling. Things are turning gray. There's a process of shifting and changing. But there's a world beyond that. And all of these great teachers speak to that world, the world that is beyond the world of the changing. And it's almost as if we have to begin to know that world. There's a famous poem by Emily Dickinson, who's one of the people I wrote about in Wisdom of the Ages. Emily Dickinson, who 19th century poet, lived up in Massachusetts. Brilliant lady, wrote thousands of poems. A lot of them were about higher awareness and higher consciousness. In a very simple language, she said, imagine holding up a handful of dust or dirt. She said, this quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion where bloom and bees fulfilled their oriental circuit, then ceased like these. This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. It's all quiet dust, all of it. And it's all in a state of change. And who we are is not that dust. And that's what the poets and the philosophers and the great teachers have come to tell us about and risk their lives to tell us, that there's something more to it. You all, when you go to the physician and you get a blood test, and they'll come back and they'll tell you about your iron count. There's a finite supply of iron on the planet. Just so much iron. Some of it's flowing through your veins. The question, the eternal question, is where was that iron that's flowing through your vein before you showed up here? And where will it be when you leave? Because who you are is not that which is that material, but who you are is that quiet observer in there. And this is called, for want of a better term, it's called the world of the soul.
You see, when I resonate to anger, shame, hatred, or revenge, I add to these decidedly non-spiritual energies by joining in what I find to be so objectionable. But when I remember to bring non-judgment, love, tolerance, and compassion to these low, ego-dominated energies, I see how different the world looks, and even how different those around me act in the presence of these God-realized energies. I feel optimistic when I'm in spirit, with an inner knowing that nothing can interfere with an idea whose time is coming or has already arrived. I trust that our Creator knows what it's doing and that good triumphs over what ego believes is bad or evil. I sense that we're all moving toward a world that will no longer know the horrors of war or practice our long-established habits of inhumanity toward our brothers and sisters around the globe, who may have different cultural views and their own unique physical distinctiveness. By staying in spirit, I'm truly inspired to see the potential for greatness that's in all of us as one people, and I turn from anguish to faith that at least I can live from a place of God realization and practice being a force for good. Staying in vibrational alignment with spirit allows me to be more present in all of my life activities. Arriving seems to replace striving, and being in a state of flow is far more common than my old, uninspired state of worry and anguish. I remind myself that spirit is only here and now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, only now. By keeping my vibration aligned spiritually, I see the ecstasy in the present. Everything else that once was a source of worry doesn't come up for me, since the outcomes are already handled for me in my own mind. What will be, I remind myself. The world looks so much more peaceful when I approach it this way, and my ego, which once needed to win at all costs, is relegated to a distant seat in a stadium in another galaxy. The laws of the material world truly do not apply in the presence of God realization. And I know that I have the choice to live at this level of inspiration. When I do so, it seems that the world changes. Animals behave differently than their biological genetics would seem to allow. People at a distance seem to hear me telepathically and respond to my highest thoughts. Objects seem to materialize in defiance of what scientists say is possible. And healing takes place in spite of modern medicine saying otherwise. In other words, miracles seem to be ordinary.
The world looks like a place where everything is possible, where restrictions and limitations are non-existent, and where the power of our Creator seems to roll right up and land at my feet, begging me to hop on board and witness the infinite possibilities it offers. This is how I feel when I align myself to Spirit, cocky inside because I know something that so few ever come to realize, but humble and awestruck on the outside at the miraculousness of it all. When I remember to stay in Spirit, I've realized that when one thing appears to be going wrong, I can see clearly that 10 things are going right. For example, if my cell phone isn't working, I can note that my health is fine, my family is safe, the ocean is calm for swimming, my bank account has a surplus, my electricity is fully functional, and so on, and on it goes. From a perspective of being in Spirit, I automatically shift my attention away from what's going wrong and onto what's right. This then becomes my point of attraction, and I attract more of what I'm focused on, whereas at an earlier time in my life, I'd attract more of what was going wrong because that was my point of attraction. How sublimely beautiful the world now looks to me from this magnificent place of inspiration. No longer do I stay focused on and attract more of what's going wrong, for I've learned to place my attention on what's right, what's working, and what's aligned with the all-creating Spirit. From this place of inspiration, I ask, what if I looked deep within myself and found no original sin at all? That is, what if I discovered original innocence instead? What if the same were true for everyone? I know that our creative source is one of good, and I also know that we must be like what we came from. Therefore, everyone, including myself, is a piece of God. We came to this world from innocence and love, not from a place of sin or weakness. When I see Christ consciousness in everyone, even those with whom I differ greatly, I'm able to feel good, to feel God. When I know that there's no original sin in anyone, I'm able to think like Mother Teresa, who told the world, in each person I see the face of Christ in one of his most distressing disguises. When it is goodness that I look for, rather than sin and weakness, that's what I see. I then see goodness in the little old lady driving slowly in front of me, the elderly man fumbling with his change and delaying me at the cashier, the children squealing loudly as I'm attempting to concentrate on a book, the teenagers shouting along with their ear-splitting rap music, or the jackhammer operator whose deafening sounds fill the air with chaos. When I'm inspired, I see God realization, disguised as a minor blip, and the world looks fine, happy, and even peaceful. I remind myself of Rumi's sage advice, if you're irritated by every rub, how will you ever be polished? When I feel inspired, I notice how much zest I have for life and everything that I do. I play tennis with exuberance and without fatigue. I write from my heart, and this inner feeling radiates outward in all of my waking moments. Inspiration means doing what I love, and even more significantly, loving what I'm doing. It's my willingness to bring love and passion to the activities of my life, rather than looking for love to emerge from those events and activities. It's an attitude, and knowing this, I remember to pick a good one as often as possible. I know that being enthusiastic feels good, and I also know that I have the choice to select these attitudes at any and all times. By staying in Spirit, these outlooks on life become second nature to me.
I always said there's 3 ways to enlightenment. The first way to enlightenment, I call enlightenment through suffering. And enlightenment through suffering is I am going to go through this experience. I can think of it from drinking, for example. And then I'm going to get through it, and then I'm going to look back on it. And as I look back on it, I'm going to realize after 10 years or so the benefit that I had in that, and I am going to grow from having suffered. It's enlightenment through suffering, which is not anything I recommend, but it's mostly the way that most people take. So we go through these storms and all of these difficulties and all of the stuff that we have to go through, and then we get to a place where we look back on it and we say, now I know why I had to go through that. You know? Now I know why I went through those addictions. Now I know why I went through those horrible relationship things, and I was always trying to be right and not being able to work it out. Now I know why I had to go through the poverty. And now I know why the accident came about. Now I know why the fire that destroyed this. I know why the illness came about. But I don't do it by what I call enlightenment through suffering any longer.
I go a different direction now. And the direction that I go is the next level of enlightenment. And the next level of enlightenment is while you are going through the storm, instead of saying, someday I will realize why I had to go through this, and I'll look back on it, and I will benefit from it. Instead of that, what I do is say, what's the lesson in this for me right now? What is it that I've attracted? Why have I attracted this into my life again? And I am going to get the lesson without having to go through a long period of suffering in order to understand it and explain it. So that's the second level, and that's one I would recommend to you as you start coming back to your place of origin, as you begin to reconnect to your source. I think that there is a way, there is a possibility of going through the things that we are told we're supposed to suffer from and not suffer at all. I think there's a way. I don't say that I'm there. And when you really get good at getting into the moment and being here now, as Ram Dass says, living from this moment and being just completely engulfed in it, whatever it is that your pain is, whatever you're thinking about, whatever, there's a saying that says, I'm an old man and I've had many troubles, most of which have never happened. And most of the troubles and the suffering and the things that they are really thoughts, that all this suffering that you went through, that it was all thoughts. It was just all thought. That we become what we think about, whether we want it or not. I mean, that's really the beauty of the work of Esther and Jerry Hicks and Abraham, is the power of our thoughts. This whole idea of reconfiguring our way of processing things in such a way that we don't have to suffer. Because I'm going to go to a third point. I haven't even gotten to the third one yet. Everybody has a story. Everybody has something that that takes place that they wish hadn't taken place. We still have within us the capacity, as Abraham often says, my not eating because there are children starving in Africa is not going to feed one child. My feeling guilty, like you can't get depressed enough to undepress another person. You can't get sad enough to make somebody else happy. But you can present yourself as a person who is aligned with Source in such a way that you are a God-realized soul, that when you are around a depressed person or a starving person, you give them hope. And that's what we need, is people who have a sense of hope and can elevate themselves because of the examples. The third way to enlightenment, and that is what I call enlightenment by getting out in front of it and stopping it before it gets to you, anticipating it. As you get to a level of awareness that is so aligned with God, where you're thinking from a spiritual way at all times, seeing the unfolding of God, practicing reverence for life, the things I'll be speaking about when I speak about this meaning phase. As you get and begin to start to elevate your consciousness, what happens as you begin to elevate this, your intuitive nature begins to take over, and you begin to attract the right people and the right events and the right circumstances in your life. They just show up. And the right people, like when I decided to give up alcohol, when I decided to give up experimenting with certain drugs in my life, I remember still being tempted to go back to it. But as I was changing my conception of who I am, my concept of myself as a person, I would attempt to go back. I would find that the person that I was supposed to get the drugs from didn't show up. That it was like there was one more obstacle put between me and getting it, something that I didn't want to have anymore. Because addiction is nothing more than you never get enough of what you don't want. You never get enough of what you despise. And instead of my just going and making it easier, there'd be one more step, and then there'd be another step, and then I'd have to pause. And before you know it, it would be over. The temptation would be gone. And the right people would begin to show up. That's an extreme example. So now you can see it coming. And you get out in front of these things that used to cause you suffering, that you used to have to deal with in the present moment. And now, when they're on their way, you can deflect them. You can make them go away.